Welcome to the Health, Weight Loss and Wellness Show. We are back for another day, and today I want to introduce you to Clarissa Kristjansson. Is that the right way to pronounce?
It is,
yes. I got it right. Now, why you need to listen to Clarissa today. Clarissa is a speaker, an author, and international bestseller of the Mindful Menopause and host of the popular Thriving Through Menopause podcast. I love the name of the podcast, Thriving Through Menopause, because I feel like a lot of the times we're just surviving, right? But also, Clarissa is an internationally recognized midlife and menopause coach and mentor who helps women reinvent midlife by coming into greater awareness of themselves. I love that. Shifting their mindset, building resilience, I think that's so important, and implementing profound compassionate change in their lives. So they become that woman who lights up the room, and I feel confident, energized, and I feel like, you know, sometimes when we get to this age, we feel like a dim light. So this really spoke to me when I was reading this about you. And I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the Health, Weight Loss and Wellness Show.
Thank you, Jodie. Well, I'm so happy that I'm here and that we connected and found each other. I'm excited to talk to your audience, to make them realize that, yes, menopause can be tough at times, but you know what? It can be the best time of your life too.
Yeah, and I think that's what really spoke to me when I was searching for someone to talk on this topic was how you spoke about it in that way. And I do hear a lot of women saying, I feel invisible, you know, I feel like, you know, my spark has gone out. So before we get into all the juicy stuff, I'm really curious about, I did read something about burnout. You had burnout as well, and I did too. But I'm really curious about what led you down this path to be teaching about menopause.
Well, you're right, Jodie, there. It was my burnout. And the fact that I didn't know anything about menopause or this journey that's peri to post menopause. Because I was 45, if I share some of the things from my story, I was 45 and my life flipped upside down. My mum got dementia and she ultimately died, obviously. And my marriage went to crash. But at the same time, my body was doing all sorts of things. And I didn't even have 5 minutes to think about me because I was taking care of the situation for my family and working full time. And that's actually at the same time that I decided to emigrate to Australia, like you do. So I'm doing all this crazy stuff. Yeah. And I wasn't taking any notice of the symptoms. And when I eventually became very unwell, I had very high blood pressure. I hadn't been sleeping for a long time. I was very tired. And I went to my doctor and they gave me blood pressure meds. And one doctor said to me, well, the reason you're so fat, now hang on a minute, I weighed 67 kilos. So is because you're one of those women who stands in the supermarket checkout queue and eats chocolate. I kind of visit your face, you know, and we laugh about it now. But at the time, I just didn't know what to say. What the hell? And I just kind of left with no more support than that. The word perimenopause was never mentioned.
Yeah.
And I carried on, kept on working, and I got more anxious. I started to have anxiety attacks, which of course a big part of menopause if you're very stressed. And I just crashed and burned eventually. Yeah. And I remember standing on the street, Clarence Street in Sydney, crying, just standing there and sobbing and thinking, I can't go on with this. I don't know what to do. And that's how I started to work with mindfulness, which has become very core to my work. And I met somebody wonderful who runs a big mindfulness training company in Sydney, Open Ground. Tim is a wonderful human. She just is a wonderful human. And I got to her group and I thought, oh, all these people are like me. They've got issues too. I'm not alone here. Yeah. And I started, and I trained to become a mindfulness practitioner. And that's when my journey started, working with women at the Women's Health Research Institute in Australia, who had really quite severe gynecological issues. A lot of them were menopausal, and I began to tie that together with the other people I was working with. And I began to think, here is a group of women who are 40, 45 to 55, and they're all struggling. What's the common thread? Oh my God, it's the menopause. And I went back and I trained as a special health coach for menopausal women too, and then started my business.
And bless you for doing that, because like myself and others, I've never even heard of perimenopause, you know, and sometimes it's embarrassing. You are a woman and you don't know these things, but the thing is, it's just not talked about. Like, I jump on the phone now and talk to my sister and my mum about the symptoms that they were having. Or did you have this? Did you have that? But they never spoke about it. It was just not something that's ever, you know, not that there's any fault of theirs, but it's just kind of like, you know, you're experiencing this, that's life, get on with it, right? Yeah. And we are a family of soldier-ons, and you know, I've gained a lot from that. But this whole and I'm not the only one and not the only family where we didn't even understand that there's all these symptoms and we're all suffering them. And so now I use that as my guide. Is, okay, is this normal, what I'm experiencing? And then I ring my mum and I ring my sister, did you have this too? And it's almost identical. So do you find that, I've got some other questions I want to ask, but I'm interested in that. Do you find, I don't know whether you have generational, but do you find that people suffer the same way as their mother did, or the whole family do experience menopause very similar?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No. I mean, there is a genetic component to the kind of menopause you have, just like there's a racial and ethnic dimension to it, which are things we obviously can't do anything. Yes. So sadly, some people of a Black African community and Latino women will have some symptoms much worse, particularly hot flashes. They can, and they can have a longer perimenopause, and which is just not great. But often your mum can have a particular thing and you won't have it, because also your lifestyle's playing a huge role in here. Yeah. What, you know, how much stress you're carrying, what you eat, how you approach your life is going to impact it tremendously. So I don't have a menopause that looks at all like my mum's, because she had hormonally balanced migraines, which are a horrible thing to have. And she did put on a lot of weight. Really a lot. She had a lot of bloating, and she really struggled with that, which I didn't, you know. But the only thing we shared was we both slept very badly. But then that's about 90% of us, I think.
It's like you sleep all the time. You know, you start life sleeping first fighting sleeping, then sleeping all the time as a teenager, then never sleeping as a young adult, out partying and hardly sleeping. And then going to you know, having kids and all you want is sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when we get older, we've got the time, we don't have the responsibility, and we've got the freedom to sleep. And we can't.
Exactly.
I think as we get older too, we have that space. So we've got that space where we have more time to think. And we come to this, I was talking to a client today, we come to this time in our lives where, you know, we've got more time for us, and then we sit back and we're like, oh, bloody hell, I've been dealing with this, whatever is going on with us, for 20, 30 years. What was I thinking? You know, so we come to some of those realizations, and I don't know, I feel like sometimes it's exacerbated, I guess, from menopause and the hormones all over the place, that I feel like you're dealing with everything that's going on in your life all at once.
Oh yeah, tell me about that one. And that's very common And in my clients too, you know, that's what I see, that this is the busiest time of our life. So our body decides to go in one direction, but life is pulling us in the other. Oh my goodness. And I think that's where we feel our symptoms very acutely. And we can often feel like, I don't want this to happen to me. And that's when the negative mindsets set in, and we are pushing against a change that our body's going, no, this is part of you. And there aren't really quick fixes for the menopause. I mean, you could, for example, take HRT and you might feel a lot better, but that journey isn't true for every woman either. Not that, and I mean, I'm not a doctor, so, you know, I can't say it's right or wrong for any individual, but I know that a lot of women go through a lot of testing and trialing, and this one works and that one doesn't work, or that works for a while. So it's not like there is a quick fix out there. It's working on yourself, which is changing the way you think and feel and the way you go around doing everything for everybody. And also that saying, gosh, this might be a time for me. This might be a time for me to pause and take that space as my children are getting old, and I can choose a bit how I'd like my life to be.
Yeah, and I think maybe that should be the new definition of menopause, is when we pause life and we make it about us. And I do find a lot of women around that age start to really do that. I think when your energy is limited, then you have to be selective where you spend that energy, and I guess then that starts to show the women that do give a lot when they're in need and not getting it back. I think then they get that kind of realization about the people around them as well. So look, you know, you're right, there's a lot going on with us at this time, isn't it? And on top of that, we've got all the things that we're suffering with. So if I wanted to like supercharge my wellness and be like really super healthy, or even around menopause, if I really wanted to focus intently on the wellness that is going to make menopause easier for us to thrive. All right, so if we go with the thriving, what would you suggest? What would be your number one thing that people should go to? And if you're listening, get out your journals, right? And take some notes now.
Exactly.
You know, if we want to really thrive, if I say, all right, I'm not thriving right now, I really want to thrive, what would be your number one first thing to go to?
I actually think to start to put some control into your menopause experiences. If you walk around feeling afraid of what's happening, or you don't know what's going on, then you can't even have a proper conversation with someone who can help you. And a lot of the time, our awareness is very low. Yes, I think it's getting better. I think there's a lot more websites, and we're here talking, so we're raising the awareness. But you've got to be aware of your own self as well. So I really love when women work with me, and I say this a lot: track what's going on with you. Track whether your periods are like, track when you have, you know, a hot flash, you can't sleep. What is happening? When is it happening? How intense is it? What's going on around it? Because firstly, you're able to look at things, and we know if we take hot flashes, because they're so common, and but 80% of us will have them.
Yeah.
They can be triggered by, for example, certain foods, alcohol. They can be triggered by situations that are very stressful. And of course, then your mind goes orbital. Then you're into thinking, and it doesn't get better. So next time it happens, you know, you think, oh my God, I'm purple, everybody can see it. Well, maybe they can and maybe they can't. But we can take control. We can change what we eat and drink. We know that some situations might be stressful. So what techniques and tools can I bring to that to make a change in that situation? So being aware of what happens and the context around it's really important. Also, if you're tracking your symptoms when you get to your doctor's surgery, and remember, most doctors give you 7 to 10 minutes, and half the time they're looking at the computer. And they often don't have much specific training in menopause.
No.
That's they don't. You know, that's just how they're trained.
My
Then
doctor got, sorry, my doctor got scared when I talked about a pap smear, I'm pretty sure. Like, he's a great doctor. But he's like, oh, maybe you might want to see one of the women doctors.
Yeah. So a lot of them have had little or no training in this space. They often think you're depressed or what else. But if you come with your symptoms and your questions mapped up, then you can go in there and you can say, this is what I'm experiencing. This is what's going on. Could I be in perimenopause? Can you help me? Because otherwise what happens, we stand there kind of like, oh, well, I don't feel very well and I'm feeling a bit like this. And he doesn't necessarily go like my doctor didn't. Well, I mean, she was pretty bad, but I mean, I hear this a lot, or I hear women being dismissed and just handed antidepressants or being told, well, suck it up, get on with it. And you can be more proactive. And guess what? Being more proactive means you're in control and you'll have a much better experience. So that is my biggest tip. It's you're advocating for yourself.
Yeah. I like that, because it really, if I think about that for myself, it puts me in a different mindset, because if I'm going to the doctor in a here's all my ailments, it kind of feels like a complaint mode. And that puts our focus on the complaint that is going on with us, right? If we think about mindfulness, we're being mindful about something that we don't want. And, we're going to get more of it if we focus there. And if we shift the thinking around to awareness and coming to the party in a proactive sense, as this is what's happening to me, and, what are some of the solutions, that really feels different to me. And I feel like going to the doctor with that is, it feels more assertive, I guess. Maybe not assertive, but it really feels like I'm doing something for myself rather than being a victim to menopause. Right? Not saying that, there's anything wrong with that, but rather than it having control over me, that I think that way of thinking really helps me feel better about it, because in that sense, I feel like I'm doing something.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I'm being proactive and going, okay, what is it that I'm experiencing? And I take that to the doctor. That feels more like action taking rather than it happening to me. And there's nothing, like, I think that's the hard part, right? When it's happening and there's nothing you can do about it. But this is something that you can do.
Yes, absolutely. And I think particularly if you're not a woman who thinks you're 45, 50, but actually younger, because there are a lot of women in their 30s now who are going into perimenopause, and they have a very difficult time. So then you need to advocate even harder. I've had some guests on my podcast that have just made me cry, that they've been in their early 30s, and it isn't until they go for a fertility test and they sort of go, oh, well, you're menopausal. What do you mean?
Yeah.
And they're not aware. So I think if you notice that things are changing and you're not feeling yourself and you can't put an explanation to it, then being more aware of your own body means that you're much more in the driver's seat. And I'd say as a follow-up tip is, if you have difficulty remembering, and remember brain fog's part of this this journey, take a note. You don't have to be ashamed and write down the advice you're given or any information, because you might not remember it. And there's no shame in that. Your health is the most important thing for you. And, if you can't remember, write it down and then come home and read what information, what support you're given.
That's really good advice too, because I think that was one of the hardest things when I started going into brain fog, was I had a very sharp mind. And so I could recall a lot. And I think I've spoken about it before, but I remember standing at the letterbox and looking at the letterbox, but I could not for the life of me recall the name of a letterbox. The word was gone. It just would not come to me. I was so distressed because they're feared, like everything's about the mind for me. I'm a hypnotherapist, right? So everything's about the mind and creativeness. When I do hypnosis, that all is organic for me. And so to be worried about the mind not functioning, not working as it was, I didn't feel like I can't sit across from a client because I don't even know if I'm going to remember their name. And so to be standing there and not remembering the name of a letterbox, right? I had to ring my mum and I'm like, what's that thing that's out the front and we put letters in it?
I know, it sounds fun. It sounds funny now.
I was so distressed I couldn't remember it. So, you know, at that point, that was the catalyst for me. I think everyone kind of has their catalyst. So that was the catalyst for me, is I need to do something about that. So I think, what did I do? I started a mind game or something like that, or something where you're using your mind a lot. So that's when I started using that, and that really worked. So again, that awareness and taking action and knowing that, you know, it wasn't going to fix overnight. And plus there's some other stuff that some herbal medicine that I took as well that really helped. Oh my God, that really helped. So I wonder if you could share also, so just so the listeners can understand, you know, we talked about, you know, mindfulness being a solution. Can you give us an example of how you've put that mindfulness into practice with a client, maybe what it was they're experiencing, you know, obviously keeping confidentiality, but what they were experiencing and how they put the mindfulness practice into practice and
Into practice, exactly. Yeah.
And then how, you know, what was the change? What was the result that they see? Just so people can see from example what that would probably look like for them.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Jodie, for letting me share my client's story. And she came to me at a time when she was very distressed. So this lady was a very senior person working in advertising in the UK, and she's also a local politician. So she's a very active, out there, bright person. And she'd actually been dismissed from her job because of her menopause symptoms. Oh. And unfortunately, that's not as uncommon as we think it is. And she was in a really bad space, and it was all to do with her anxiety. She was anxious about everything, and that was leading to like the brain fog. She couldn't show up in meetings. Yeah. She was missing deadlines, you know, everything that you're not supposed to do when you're in a job, and especially not when you're in a senior job in front of clients. And they said to her, your anxiety is creating issues for us, you need to go. So when she arrived to me, she was at this crossroads in her life. And, you know, if you looked at a lot of aspects of her life, she was doing a lot of things right. And I want to really highlight that, because she had a good diet, she exercised, you know, and in that way, she wasn't living, you know, that side of life, which some of my clients just need that part of it sorting out to move forward. She was very much unable to manage this anxiety. So that's where we worked, and that's where mindfulness can be really good, because it helps you firstly to start focusing on the present moment. You know, that's its biggest thing, is that you're just here now. And through techniques like simple grounding and breathing techniques, we started to make her be able to firstly just be in the moment. And that's hard, because you probably know, Jodie, as well, that people who are very anxious find it difficult to focus on their breath, because they breathe very shallowly, and then it all gets really tight up here. So we're learning to relax and breathe slowly. We worked on those aspects. And then we began to understand the triggers to her anxiety. What were those specific things for her that would come up for her? And could she feel them in her body before they happened? And a lot of the work I do is also around using the body as your anchor, as a way to sense the world. That's very classic mindfulness. We often start with a body scan type work. Yeah. And so she could feel that, and she could feel those racing thoughts. So we used a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy type techniques to see what were her thoughts, how distorted were they. When she could feel that little thought coming, could she replace it with something more positive? And, you know, she worked through this, and then we did some compassion work together, because there was always that element of not loving yourself enough. So we got ourselves to ground first, to begin to recognize those signs when she was going to spin off, and then start to work on how she could love herself and sometimes forgive herself when things didn't go quite right.
Yeah.
And the fantastic news was that she actually got another job, but she changed the way she wanted to work. So she'd been wanting to work on more on contracts, not be all this full time. I mean, advertising is really tough. I know that from my past life, you know, but she could choose a job that was shorter contract, and she could put more effort into the political work that was very important to her, sort of grassroots politics, where she lived in London. And she was just such a different person. And she's managed to go through COVID doing more of her local politics work, which is very needed. And she's just happier. And I think she found a better way to live that worked with her menopause symptoms, which isn't long hours and being under so much pressure, but going more with the flow.
That's beautiful. What a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. And as you were sharing that, I was thinking to myself, you know, what if the universe gives us menopause for us to realize that we should be doing something else with our lives? You know, like, and I just hearing her story, it's very similar to a lot of other stories that I've heard where people have had a breakdown and then transformed, I guess, into or morphed into something that's more joyful and, you know, more alive for them. And, you know, bless you for helping her get there, right? And it was probably something that she always really deep down that felt right to her. And she managed to get there through this breakdown. And lucky she sought out help to manage their transition over. Because sometimes people have that breakdown and then they're in breakdown and then they don't know what to do with that. And, you know, don't seek help because maybe they might feel embarrassed about that or not really know that something's going on and the things that trigger us. So I guess the menopause triggered that in her, and seeking that help to transition through what it is that she's thinking and feeling is so important. And the end result of that, and having that more, it sounded like it was more authentic to her, and it would be something that she'd be enjoying and not so hectic, and enjoying the, you know, the end part, not the end, I shouldn't say the end, it's not the end yet, but enjoying this time in life and giving us the space and being okay for that. So there was just so much in that story that I just got out of, and reflecting myself as well as I'm talking to you. So
you're so right there, Jo. I mean, you're so right. And I think you said that it's this finding our purpose. It's claiming our space. I sometimes call it you're claiming your crown, because you're beautiful, and we haven't had our crowns on, so we're claiming our crown. And that's what I think she definitely did.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So tell me, what would you tell the people watching right now that really want to change? They've been at it for a really long time, right? So similar to your client, maybe they're not aware that they were in an area that really wasn't serving them, or maybe they've been struggling with weight or their health for a really long time. They really want to change, but they just can't seem to make anything kind of stick or work. What would be your suggestion there?
Do you know what? I think sometimes we have to press the pause if we can. We actually have to press the pause in the menopause, which is press a little pause and get off this conveyor belt of all the doing.
Yeah.
And we have to start looking at what is infusing your energy and what is actually just sucking it away. Because otherwise we are caught in this space, and we actually need to give ourselves some time. And a very good way to start is to get a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle of it, and write about the things that give you energy, even if it's just in your day. And the ones that suck your energy. Don't make it really super complicated. Just look at one day and think all the things in my day that are giving me good stuff and all the stuff that are sucking it. And if there's a lot of stuff sucking your energy, take a really good look and say, which of these could I draw a line through? I don't have to do. Which of these can I delegate to somebody else to do? And which of these do I have to keep because I have to keep? I mean, sometimes there are people who suck your energy that unfortunately we can't get rid of. You know, they can be your mother
sometimes.
Some of those, but how do you change that conversation? But that gives you some concrete stuff. And then look at all the things that give you that uplift, that wow, you know, wow. And say, how do I get more of that in my life? How do I celebrate those moments? Because then we're starting to, we're on level 1, but at least we're in a place where we know where we need to be changed, and we're coming a little out of the sort of the overwhelm. Then we can start making some plans, and we need to talk to people. We need to find the words, I need you to help me. I need your support. Because often in menopause, our moods are up and down, and then we end up screeching at the people we love the most. And we do, because we have said the words, I need your support. And we understand, I mean, your children and your partner, 99% of the time would love to help you.
Yeah.
And we need to recognize that. So
let them
have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
Because if you said that to them, they would go, oh, how can I help you then?
Yeah.
And learning different ways to communicate at this time is very important, because otherwise we're stuck.
Yes, and that we were just having a conversation about communication. Some people you communicate easy with, and some people you may struggle. And I want to get better at communicating with the people that I don't find it easy. You know, like we may have completely different interests. So how do I then create that communication? So that's something that I'm working on. But I really like the idea that it's very simple. Suggestion there, and if you're listening, get your journal out, do a line right now and list the things in your journal, the things that give you energy. I love that. They'll list all the things that are giving you energy, and list down all the things that are taking your energy, and just take a moment right now to do that. And I guess if we want to think about your promise jar for this session, maybe there's, you know, that's something that, you know, or maybe Clarissa, you've got something to suggest for the promise jar, or it could be that you're going to promise to pause, or, you know, something like that.
Yep. I think you can promise to yourself that every single day you can find, even if it's 2 minutes, 1 minute, where you pause. You don't make it complicated. I've got to press an app, but don't do that. Promise to yourself that you're going to take 1 minute breathing space in the day. You're just going to stop, breathe, check in with yourself, and just ask your questions. How do I feel? Scan your body, your body from your head to your toes. How do I feel? And move on from that. Never any harder than that to start with. And that's being mindful.
Yeah. And you could set a reminder on your phone to go off and tell you, if, you know, forgetful menopause like me, I've got little reminders that remind me to move. Otherwise I forget, right? And so, you know, I use my brain in other ways. So it's not like I'm not using my brain, but I like that, just even if it's just a minute. And you can certainly extend that as time goes on if you really enjoy that. But just checking in, and what that looks like, the checking in is the scanning of the body, and asking, you know, even in those moments, what do I need right now? What is it that I need right now? Awesome. I love that. So you have a special gift for the listeners. So would you like to tell us about that? I'm very excited about this one, actually.
I've got this mindful menopause gift that is there. It's like a little workbook. It's very easy for you to follow, but you can actually sort of spend a little time each day jotting down, journaling a little bit, following the questions I have in there. And, you know, after doing that for a few days, you'll notice more about yourself. You'll have some questions in there, and you may want to take it further, but it's very simple, and it's meant to be an introduction. You know, there's no loads of meditating and hard stuff like that if that's not your thing, and it isn't always everybody's thing, but just that workbook to help you ground yourself at this time and become more aware.
That's so generous of you. Thank you so much for that. And that link to that will be on this page. Probably down the bottom, you'll find a button for you to go and grab that workbook. And I guess it covers some of the things that we talked about today. Yes, beautiful. So go ahead and click that button and grab that free gift while you can. And feel free to rewind this session if there's anything that kind of stands out to you. It'll be live on this page for the next 48 hours. I think it'll be up. There should be a timer on the page anyway. So I want to thank you. So there was so much great knowledge in this session, and lots that I'm going to go away and reflect about myself. So thank you so much for your generous time spending with us and talking us through menopause and how we can actually thrive in this time rather than just kind of winging it, trying to get through. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay, and I will leave you to get on your day. And for the listeners at home, make sure that you tune in tomorrow for another session, Health, Weight Loss and Wellness Show. So go ahead and grab that download now, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye for now.